The Barber Motorsport Park is a 740-acre multi-purpose racing facility located in Leeds. Not Leeds, North Yorkshire, but Leeds, Alabama. It was built by George W. Barber and includes the Barber Vintage Motorsport Museum. It's been the site of the IndyCar in Alabama since 2010. Barber is also utilised by the North America Porsche Driving School. The park opened in 2003. The track has 17 turns over 2.3 miles or 3.7 kilometres. It was designed by Alan Wilson and runs clockwise. The infield of the track has a number of large sculptures, including a series of large steel spiders and dragonflies, a pair of lions, and a figure pushing a boulder. The first motorcycles were acquired by the museum's collection in 1988, and it opened its doors to the public in 1994. Presently, the collection consists of over 1,500 motorcycles from over 200 manufacturers from around the world, and the total continues to grow. Amazingly, 99% of the motorcycles in the museum are fully working. It is certified by the Guinness Book of Records as the largest vintage and contemporary motorcycle collection in the world. The displays are spread over 5 expansive levels, which have wheelchair access ramps and a glass lift or elevator, with a carbon fibre bodied Formula One car on its roof. The floor space was extended in 2016 to a truly monumental 250,000 square feet. 250,000 square feet. It has been viewed briefly, or it can be viewed briefly, I should say, in a single viewing in just half a day. But connoisseurs and historians may want to take a full day to truly soak up all that the collection has to offer, which also includes a great many motor cars, especially Lotus racing models. Not only is the collection genuinely jaw-dropping, but the good folk at Barber run it as a non-profit organisation, donating its proceeds to a number of local and national charities. And so the Barber Motorsport Museum is truly impressive. It's a fabulous collection of motorcycles and sporting cars from the last century or so. The cars are predominantly Lotus racing cars, but there's also MGs and Ferraris and a whole assortment to look at if your preference is more 4 wheels than 2 wheels. There's so much to look at in actual fact that I had to split up this video into 4 sections. This first one is going to cover the cars, and the following 3 are going to cover the motorcycles, starting from the early years up to present day. And the whole museum I thoroughly recommend you visit. It just left me wanting to ring all my friends from all around the world and say, whatever you do, at least once in your lifetime, please come and visit the museum and have a thoroughly good day out. So here are the cars, and I hope you like them. Please comment, subscribe and like. This is a 1927 Ford Model T truck. It is a 4-cylinder flathead and had a dizzying top speed of 45 miles an hour. Henry Ford didn't invent the automobile. He didn't even invent the assembly line. But what Henry did was apply mass production techniques to produce a reliable automobile that was inexpensive enough for the general public. Before the Model T, automobiles had been considered primarily a plaything for the wealthy. Contrary to popular belief, Model Ts were available in a variety of colours from 1909 until 1913, and again in 1926 and 1927. In the intervening years, black was used primarily because it dried slightly faster than colours. Also, using one colour made it unnecessary to match various components during assembly. At the height of production, the assembly line turned out as many as 10,000 vehicles in a single day. The truck featured here is a 1927 model. 1949 MGTC, made in Great Britain. The MGTC was launched in 1945, just after the war had ended, replacing the TB, which had entered production in 1939, but was limited to 379, halted by the start of World War II. The MGTC introduced the American soldier to the sports car. Radically different from any car sold in America prior to the war, and even decades after, being small, light, and with a stiffer suspension, the TC allowed the youth of the 1950s to experience driving like no American generation before. The MG proved so popular, many were exported and used in America, most often by the young veterans who first experienced the car while serving in Europe, as a radical alternative to what Detroit was offering. Being offered with various stages of engine tune allowed many of the young men to experience organised racing for the first time. 1952 Lotus Mark IV, first customer car. This is a truly historic one-off, and the very first car built and sold by the fledgling Lotus Engineering Company. The original owner was Mike Lawson, who had trailed an earlier Chapman home-built, the Mark II, on which this car is largely based. But this time Chapman was actually more interested in racing, having built and successfully completed the Mark III, but a firm order from a satisfied customer could not be ignored, and it was the proceeds from the sale which financed the early business. The car underwent many changes over the 3 seasons it successfully completed, displayed a modified body and relocated engine for the 1953-54 seasons. The car was restored in 1998 by Martin Halliday, who, with expert restorer Mike Brotherwood and the knowledge of the Chapman earlier business partner Michael Allen, set about to restoring, keeping as many of the original body parts as possible, the car to its original 1952 specification. 1954 Lotus Mark VI. This used a Ford 100E 4-cylinder flathead engine, had a top speed of 90 miles an hour. The Mark VI was Lotus's first real production car. Success at the English racetracks translated into enough sales for founder Colin Chapman to finally dedicate full-time to his small company. Prior to the Mark VI, total production of all Lotus cars was just 6. The Mark VI was also the first of a new tube frame chassis designed by Lotus, a bare frame weight of only 63 pounds, yet it was enough in terms of rigidity to provide excellent cornering speed. Lotus was to continue this design philosophy of minimising weight of all the components throughout its racing history. 1954 Lotus Mark VIII. This was one of the first attempts at a fully bodied race car. Chapman's amazing understanding of engineering and aerodynamics utilised with an aluminium body and incorporated vertical wings at the rear to aid in high-speed stability. The entire body was carefully tested and tuned using the Lotus wind tunnel. The wind tunnel consisted of no more than tufts of cotton taped to the car at various points, and Mike Costin strapped to the hood, observing the cotton at speeds of up to 100 miles an hour. The Mark VIII was at the forefront of true aerodynamics, being introduced to racing and directly led to the Mark 9 and 10 models. 1960 Lotus 18 Formula Junior. This model had 75 horsepower and could reach top speeds of 100 mph plus. The Lotus 18 Junior was Colin Chapman's first rear-engine design. While not a Lotus innovation, Chapman used its advantages along with his own ideas to dominate this Formula Junior race series. So successful was the 18 Junior in beating the Italian competition, 140 plus examples were sold over a 2-year period. This began the rear engine era of motorsports. The bodywork was originally constructed of aluminium. Later cars benefited from the new fiberglass skins. Typical of Chapman, lightness was paramount. Popular folklore of the day had Chapman designing ultralight parts and only strengthening them after a failure. While ultimately successful, this design philosophy tagged Lotus with an undeserved reputation for unreliability. 1963 Lotus Type 29/2 IndyCar. This car utilised the Ford aluminum V8 with a power of 400 horsepower and a top speed of some 200 miles an hour. The Lotus 29 was derived from the revolutionary Lotus 25. Lotus used technology derived from the aircraft of the day in the chassis design, Gone was the typical tube frame, and in its place was a radical sheet metal monocoque. The aluminum channels distributed the loads in a compact manner, allowing for a tiny sleek body and housed the fuel cells. This Lotus 29 was built by Dan Gurney to use in 1963 IndyCar 500. Along with the teammate Jim Clark, the 29 sealed the fate of traditional front-engine roadsters prevalent at Indy until this time. Gurney crashed in practice and used the backup car in the race. His teammate in the sister car was narrowly defeated in a controversial finish by Parnelli Jones. This car was repaired and raced at Indy 3 more times, leading the 1964 Indy before retiring with an all-leak, coming in third in 1965 and crashing in 1966. This race car is a tribute to Sir John Surtees. The museum has John Surtees' Ferrari on display and also his MV Agusta motorcycle. He's the only man to have been world champion at the Premiership level in both classes. 1964 Lotus Type 31. New for 1964 was the Formula 3 class with its lower performance requirements. Lotus, while having cut its teeth on the similar Formula Junior, was devoting more effort to the Formula 1 program. Subsequently, they revived the Lotus 22 design, and with minor updates to fulfill rule changes. This strategy proved too little in respect to the competition, and the 31 never achieved much racing success. Lucky for Lotus, the British driving schools adopted the 31 as a good school car, since its simple design was both rugged and easy to maintain. The schools ordered an additional 19 cars to fill the requirements. 1965 Lotus Type 26R, the S2. This particular model had a power rating of 180 brake horsepower and a displacement of 1558 cc. It was a two-cylinder direct overhead cam model utilising Weber carburetors and a 6-speed box. It weighed 1,381 pounds and had a top speed of circa 130 miles per hour. 1966 Lola T70 Spyder Replica. The hot setup for the 1966 racing season was the Lola T70 with a Chevrolet power plant. This was proven by John Surtees taking another world championship that year in the first ever season of Can-Am in a car appearing very much like this one. This car was built in the Barber restoration shops using a race car replica Lola T70 Spyder body over an RCR designed aluminum monocoque. The Barber Museum was careful to maintain the outward appearance of the Surtees Lola while incorporating the latest in technology, allowing for a car that is simpler to maintain, handles better, and is faster than what actually existed in 1966. 1970 Lotus Type 69. The Lotus 69, designed by Dave Baldwin, raced in a single-seat formula of its day from Formula 1 to Formula Ford. The 1971 Lotus Type 69 Formula Ford was built in response to sales agents' needs for something more potent than the obsolete Type 61. The resulting car had several more inches of track than the nearest competitor. A highly sturdy and stiff space frame designed for the rigours of Formula 2. With the good graces of a design that had been works developed for 3 years, some say the Lotus 69 Formula Ford may have been the best Formula Ford car ever built, but no doubt superior to the field in 1971 when introduced. Lotus is rumoured to have lost money on each 69FF sold, and midway in 1972 discontinued the Lotus 69FF with more than 17 unfulfilled orders on the books, and they ended Lotus customer race car production, a practice dating back to the Lotus Mark II. 1972 Ferrari Dino 246 GT, made in Italy, a 65-degree V6 mid-engine, 195 horsepower, 2,418 cc displacement, double overhead cams, 3 Weber 40 DCF carburetors, a 5-speed box with vented 4-wheel discs, 2,380 pounds dry. The Dino was named in honour of Mr. Ferrari's son and was the first new design for the company. This mid-engine V6 was a departure from the famous V12 front-engine design of previous Ferrari road cars. Its curves and proportions were mimicked for many years to come in future road cars. It's one of the few designs that still looks appealing from all angles even 30 years later. Many believe this is the most beautiful car of all time. 1984 Lotus Type 95T. The 95T was the third design by Lotus with turbo power. The tiny Renault V6 could deliver 1100 plus horsepower for short qualifying runs, but had to be detuned to 750 horsepower during the race. Its compact size allowed the designers Gerard de Courage, I hope I pronounced that correctly, to build a sleek body and chassis that would cheat the win. While this enabled it to earn decent starting positions, the fuel-thirsty turbo required the boost to be turned down to finish the race on the 220 litre maximum fuel allowance rules of the day. The team's two drivers were Elio De Angelis and Nigel Mansell, who collectively earned 2 third places and 3 fourth place finishes. De Angelis in addition was a consistent finisher in 12 of 16 races. Lotus subsequently finished third in the Constructors' World Championship that year. Both drivers were allowed to purchase their cars at the end of the season. This car belongs to De Angelis. Its original Renault was allowed to be sold with the car, one of the few F1 engines in private hands. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this special preview at the Barber Motor Museum. This black and gold JPS special was always my favourite looking race car growing up. I wonder what yours was. In terms of my favourite car, has to be the Dino of the collection there. The silver Dino is just stunning. But there are many race cars that are not covered in this video, and if you get the chance, I would urge you to go to Barber Motor Museum and have a grand day out there. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to my next video covering the motorcycles of the Barber Motor Museum.